Hello and welcome to the Common Heathens episode 13. You're going to have to pardon my hair
13.
flying. Yeah, 13. Unlucky number 13. 13.
Yes.
Pardon my hair. I have a fan going because my air conditioning is broken and it's really, really hot here right now.
Yeah, you look like you're doing some kind of like Sports Illustrated shoot at the minute with your hair going and all lush and lovely.
Hey, look. That's your calendar, which I haven't changed from February.
What month is that? February?
February.
You could at least... Oh. So you've missed March and April and pretty much all of May as well.
I'm terrible at calendars. I use digital calendars, so pardon my hair.
I mean, I've got one up here as well of my own, and yeah, I never change it on the first of the month either. So
okay, so just as a reminder, if you like what we do here at Common Heathens, you can be our patron and support it and ensure that we can keep doing this by going to patreon.com/commonheathens. Or if you don't want to support us that way, but you still want to support us, you can tweet links to our broadcasts. You can share them on other forms of social media and rate our podcast on iTunes. 5 stars if you like us.
5 stars. Yeah. That would be great.
That would be awesome. So how are you doing, Oz?
I'm doing pretty well, actually. I was away for a few weeks doing some work training out in the Victorian country, and I was able to take some lovely photographs, of which you will be getting one. And so that was different, fun. I'll tell you, the place I was at, you get to either via train or via train, then bus, like the schedule. The train always, there's a bigger town about halfway, and there's always a train out to that town, and then sometimes train bus. Anyway, I got a bus back into Melbourne on one of the weekends I came back, and seriously, the last 2.5 Ks through the city of Melbourne took as long as the previous 50. So Melbourne traffic is just mad. It is mental. So I definitely appreciated the lack of traffic out there. And there was one time I was talking to a lady I was working with, and she said something about, and that happened at the traffic lights. I went, wait, what? So the town I was in, they have 2 sets of traffic lights, which are pretty much next to each other. So you can call it the traffic lights, and people know where you mean. They have 1 pedestrian crossing. And the cool part about that is that it connects the pub on one side of the road to the pub on the other side of the road. So that was really cool. And the other thing is, I'm going to have a bit of a gush, as you told me to do. I got a tweet from Ricky Gervais overnight telling people to follow me, which was pretty cool. And you know what? It's not because he's famous as such. It's because I admire him. Like, I like what he does. I love a lot of what he says. I think he's pretty spot on a lot of the time. So to have someone you agree with like that also agree with what you say and admire what you do, that is cool. So it's not because he's well known throughout the world. It's because I like what he does and he likes what I do, and that's pretty cool. Yeah. How about you? What have you been?
Well, I have been, oh my gosh, just trying to keep up with everything. My son has baseball and Cubs, and there's just like, this is like a tiny little window of time that I have for this. And then after it's like all hell breaks loose again. I'm not allowed to sleep. I can't eat. That it's just driving like hours and like, oh my gosh. But right now he's camping for the first time overnight without us. And yeah, so inside I'm like crapping myself.
Yes, I bet.
Yeah. It was so hard to
But we were going to do this episode 24 hours ago, and when I said, all right, are we going to get going, you said, well, actually, can we delay, because I got to do this, then I'm coming here, then I got to go, and I thought, holy crap, yes mate, we'll delay. Jesus.
And then And in and amongst all of that, I had 11 articles to write for my boss last week. 11 on topics that I'm not an expert on. Although, granted, I am learning. I'm our family's credit guru now. So
excellent. Good work.
Anyways, we were going to do this episode about alternative medicine, and I was really looking forward to talking about that because, well, I find, even though like some of it upsets me, but I find a lot of it also hilarious. So I thought it would have been a really fun one, but sadly, we couldn't not talk about the Manchester bombing, and yeah, we had to change the topic. I think it was something we had to talk about.
Yeah. And I remember I woke up to it, and I think it had only just happened. Like, I don't think it was happened too long before I woke up. And initially it was just reports of an explosion at a stadium in Manchester. That's pretty much all that was coming through. There was even talk initially when I was hearing about it that it might have just been some kind of electrical fault after the concert and things like that. So it was not necessarily, oh God, what's happened now? What's happened again?
Yeah.
But then, so obviously as the time went and more information came out, it became known what actually happened, and it was just so sad. And I just, for me, I'm a parent of teenage girls, and I heard a lot of people, saying, imagine it. Imagine you hear this and you're wondering what's happening to your children. Like, your children are there, and you would be, your mind would be unfunctioning. It would be awful. And I did see, at least one of the mothers, wanting to know where her child was, and unfortunately her child was one of the ones who died. And I cannot begin to imagine what those people went through.
No, me neither. It's like, when people die in any way, like when their lives are ended too soon in any way, it's upsetting. But this was like kind of extraordinarily so, like, it's just so, like, it was kids and they were probably having the best night of their lives. And I just don't know. I mean, I know what it takes to make somebody do something like that. I know what it takes. There's only one thing that makes people do something like that. And
yes,
it's faith. But yeah, I was very, very upset. And that an Ariana Grande concert, like, I'm not a big fan or anything like that, but I just, there's just not words. There's not words. And that's rare for me. As you guys know, you read my blog, and I just, there's not words. There's no words. I couldn't even write anything about it. Like, I was just choked. Like, I don't know how to process it.
Yeah. So, and out of this comes something that's, I guess, all too regular now is, so initially people will start making points. The pray for hashtag comes about, pray for Manchester this time. People say, there's no point praying for Manchester, it doesn't help. Then people say, don't be an arsehole about people praying. And then someone else will say, but we've got to do something different. And then someone will use this to make a point that, some kind of political statement. And then someone will use that political statement to make a personal statement about the person who's making the political statement. And it's like, don't use this to further your agenda, but I'm going to use this to further my personal agenda against you. And you think, well, hang on, you're doing exactly the same thing. Mm-hmm. And then, I mean, as cold as it sounds, we're going to move on. Like the families, the people directly impacted, obviously it's going to be different. But for the world at large, the news cycle, as far as I know, is not talking about it anymore even. And someday in the all too near future, it'll happen again. And the same thing will happen again. And the thing that won't happen again is people, or enough people, acknowledging and trying to fix the problem. And like you said, that problem is faith. Now, we had a discussion with someone on Twitter who said that the investigation has found that he was motivated by the US bombings in Syria, and his sister apparently said that he was upset at the kids who had been killed in Syria. Now, I get that. I get being upset at that. That makes sense. But to then translate that into going to a that is largely attended by teenage and preteen girls and blowing yourself up and killing a bunch of them, that doesn't make sense. You can't come to the other without something in between. And that is the promise of an afterlife. You have to convince someone that there's something in it for them to do that. And we get all this apology and all this skirting around of the issue.
Yeah, that's what I said to her originally was, you can't convince a teenage boy or girl to strap a bomb to their chest without the promise of some kind of a reward, right? And the only reward you could possibly promise them is in the afterlife. So I know that there have been, there's questions about whether or not all suicide bombers in history have been, doing it to achieve some kind of afterlife. But this one, definitely. And anytime it's a kid, I would say definitely. Anytime it's a young person, anytime it's, a young adult or a teenager who has gone into a public place, and blown themselves up. I mean, kids don't just do that. They don't just say, I'm mad about something, so I'm going to put a bomb on myself and end my life and end the lives of all of these other people. That's just not how it works. There's something else that goes into it, and we all know what that is. And the thing is that all these apologists who come out of the woodwork know what it is too. But they're grasping at straws. Like, we saw so many ridiculous straws after this one, and after every single attack that happens, that were grasped at. Like the Independent saying that it's not Muslims and it's not mental health that are to blame for this, it's men. Like, it's literally, they will put the heat on anyone just to turn people's eyes away from Islam. And it's not men. My husband doesn't do that. My son doesn't do that. You don't do that I know of. You're still alive.
I can absolutely 100% assure you that I have never been a suicide bomber.
Yeah,
promise.
I mean, it's not men. It is faith.
You have to add in other ingredients to men to get this to happen.
Yeah.
So it's not men, it's faith. And in this day and age, the faith that does it is Islam. I'm not saying there's no Christian terrorists, and I'm not saying Christians don't kill people. We know that they do. But specific suicide bombers attacking people that have nothing to do with the issue. One of the victims was an 8-year-old girl. What did she ever do to this guy? What did she ever do to this guy to deserve to be blown up after a concert? Like you said, she would have been coming out of that, endorphins would have been mad in her head. She would have been the happiest she's ever been in her life. And this sick bastard comes along and does this to her for no good reason. So the reason he did it is because he was convinced by the Islamic faith that he has an afterlife and that he has a duty to fulfill to get that afterlife. You can't just say it was because he's a man. You have to add other ingredients, other factors in to get a man to do this.
Yeah, and to have somebody like come to us and say that they read that the investigation uncovered that he, he had expressed a great deal of sadness and anger about innocent children being killed in Syria as a result of, U.S. actions. And, her argument is that his sister said that this was his motivation. And that's a whole lot of hearsay when at the exact same time, we know that this guy was Muslim. We know that the holy book that he worships calls for such actions, and that parts of it can be interpreted to be commands for him to do things like this. We know that ISIS does stuff like this repeatedly all of the time, and we know that ISIS claimed responsibility for this. So, a little whisper from his sister saying, "I think it might have been this," doesn't cancel out all that other evidence. No. Like, we know that Islam had something to do with this. Now, I think a lot of people do is they get confused about what we mean when we say that Islam does have something to do with this. I think that they think that we're saying it's the only factor.
Yes.
And that's not what we're saying. No logical thinking person could say that that's the only factor that's gone into this. But it is a factor, and to deny that it's a factor in these things, in these attacks, is just like, I don't understand it. I don't like it's a sickness for some people. Yes. I think I don't get it.
Yeah, so there's the Islamophobia propaganda machine winds up, and people maybe are scared of saying it's Islam because they don't want to be that bizarre thing that's happened, that if you speak out against Islam, you're racist, the Ben Affleck thing. Our friend from Twitter has made a point in our chat that says, we're all angry about Manchester, but how many people will blow themselves up in a mosque as revenge? I think that's a good point, because this cycle of revenge and blowing yourself up in turn, it ends somewhere. And where does it end? It's going to end with the people who haven't been radicalized into Islam. That's where it's going to end. So,
well, more specifically, it ends with secular values, because there was a time when Christianity was just as bloody and terrorizing as Islam is now, and they, Christianity has reformed itself as far as violence goes. I mean, I would say that's about it, but as far as violence goes, it's been reformed by the secular ideologies all around it, and secular values all around it, and it's being kept in check by secular values.
Yes,
but Islam isn't.
Christianity is most popular and most followed in countries that have moved on from Christianity to a large degree. There is represented by, a diverse range of people. A friend of mine, Martin Pribble, he once made the point that Islam, I think it's 700 years younger than Christianity, and it behaves like it. And you could say that, Christianity has gone through its moody young adult teenage years and is now growing up. And the problem we have is that if you ever say Christianity blah 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 because it doesn't do this anymore, someone's going to come up and go, oh, what about this, or what about this? And neither of us saying is Christianity is perfect. Either of us is saying that there are no problems anymore with Christianity. But when specifically compared to Islam, there is a vast difference. And the difference, if you try to get up a Christian law anywhere that's probably not the US South. That's probably the exception. People will shout you down. Like, it's not going to happen in New Zealand. It's not going to happen in the UK. It's not going to happen in Canada. Certainly not going to happen in Scandinavia.
Mm-hmm.
Australia still doesn't have marriage equality because of Christians, but it's inevitable that will go. The groundswell is big and just getting bigger all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the comparison in the Islamic world, the authority that the Islamic officials have, like the clerics, I think they're called, you know, that they're running the show. They're not just members of the community. Like, my suburb, there's a couple of churches. If the priest came out and declared, you know, this video game is no good, no one would care. Like, there might be 10 people in his congregation that might go, oh, well, I better not go and buy that video game. But the community at large wouldn't give a crap. Whereas, you know, if in Pakistan a cleric declares that a woman burnt pages of the Quran, a mob will form and they'll go and kill her. Like, it has happened. So that's the difference. Christianity doesn't have the authority in the countries that it's in, whereas Islam does. And it's the secularism that has to rise above that to put Islam down in its place. And you'll get to the point where, hopefully, where I'm a Muslim, all right, you know, what's the score in the footy? You know, I don't care. Where, you know, like, no one tells me they're a Christian unless I'm specifically at an atheist or Christian event, you know. Mm-hmm. So time has to be the factor, but unfortunately, you know, it's been said that Islam is 7th century thinking with 21st century weapons.
Yeah.
And that's a real big problem.
Someone in our chat, Raging Cajun, I think he must be from New Orleans, said that in the South, that Christianity does have a lot of authority, and that, you know, when teenagers say that they're atheists, they're kicked out by their Christian parents. And that I know, and I know that Oz knows that too, because we get people emailing us and DMing us saying, like, I've been disowned or I've been kicked out and stuff like that. I don't know about you, Oz, but I've had a few of those.
Yeah, I've
people.
had those chats.
And it's not just the South either. It's there's one person that I know both of us talk to on a regular basis, is in Pennsylvania, and she was disowned by her family. Yeah. And yeah, so I know about that. But the thing is that, you know, you can still go on with your life when that happens, and what Islam does ends your life. Like, it's over, you know, like, you don't recover from what Islam does. So
no, that's right. Yeah, I mean, yeah, so it's the lesser of two evils to be booted out of your house and disowned by your family, but it's certainly the one you'd take.
Yeah. It's still, that
goes to the that goes to the point that we're certainly not saying Christianity is good. It's just, if you had to, you know, you'd pick the Christianity that's happening now over the Islam that's happening now. But I think part of the you go.
Sorry. That's one of the things that bothers me the most, though, is that when something like this happens that's clearly connected to Islam, somehow we always end up talking about Christianity. You know, like,
yeah, true, yeah.
Like, I criticize Christianity way more than I do Islam, because it's, you know, it's here. It affects my life. And I know you probably criticize it way more than you criticize Islam. Mm-hmm. But when something happens that has to do with Islam, it's okay to criticize Islam without talking about Christianity, you know? But here we are once again talking about Christianity, and it's like, it's just, it never fails.
The others, I think you've made this point before, that if you criticize Christianity, people either agree or disagree. If you criticize Islam, people say it's all religion.
Yeah.
And you, well, hang on. Sometimes you talk about a specific incident that was caused because the person following it is an Islamist. And you don't have to say, but all religion is the problem, or that Christianity is bad too. We know, but in this instance, it's Islam. And I think part of the motivation for apology is, I think it's rooted in I guess an admirable thing, in that people don't want to see a backlash against Muslims because a Muslim blew themselves up, and I understand that. You know, if an atheist does something horrific, you know, that's not my fault. You know, I had nothing to do with it. And if a Muslim blows themselves up, you know, the Muslim down the street had nothing to do with it. And you know, that people are scared of a backlash against those people, and I understand that. But it doesn't help. It doesn't help address the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to acknowledge the problem to fix the problem. And the problem is putting Islam in with people who are promised an afterlife, who are angry or told to be, you know, I mean, this guy might not have had a problem, you know, until 6 months ago. Who knows? But other people who also believe in Islam get into their heads, convince them that this is the right thing to do, and then, you know, we've got 22 people dead who shouldn't be.
Yeah. They weaponize
Stop saying
faith.
that Islam isn't part of the problem, because that just furthers the problem.
Yeah, exactly. There was a tweet, I know you saw it too. There was a tweet somebody said about how it's basically, you can see why they're doing this because of all of the, you know, the Western countries won't stop meddling in the Middle Eastern affairs and stuff like that. And you know, you can totally see why these people are doing stuff like this. And I responded and I said, you know, you sound like you're saying that anyone who's not from the West or white can't be held responsible for their own actions. It's like, it's such a bigoted thing to say. Like, no, it's, you know, like, it doesn't matter what the motivation of a white guy's mass murder rampage is. I don't care if he's upset because he saw something, you know, on TV that upset him, or because maybe somebody, you know, burned down a house in his neighborhood or something like that. Like, I don't care.
Lost
I
his
don't give
job
a
as
shit.
a postman.
And yeah, none of us give a shit what his motivation is. So why do we care? Oh, you know, maybe he's angry about Syria. He's angry about casualties in Syria. That's fine. But that does not mean that he gets to go and blow things up. Like, it's not understandable that that's his reaction. You know, that's not understandable in any way, shape, or form. You hold all people accountable for the things that they do.
Yes.
All people.
Yeah, I mean, if you take that to the extreme, for want of a better word, you know, it's like, well, of course he blew himself up at a pop concert because they dropped a bomb in Syria. Yeah. Well, no. It's not okay. It's not justifiable, and it doesn't explain it. It doesn't. I don't know. Like, if you drive over nails that had been deliberately left on the road and it pops all your tires, and you kick over the letterbox of the person's nails on the road. I'm not saying that's right, but that's understandable. I get that. You're lashing out, like, because your car's stuffed. This guy was born and raised in Manchester. As far as I know, well, the reports are coming out today that he was trained by ISIS, but I don't know where. As far as I know, he'd never been to Syria, and that's not to say that where there's tragedy happening in order to be affected by it. But a guy born and raised in Manchester blowing himself up at a concert because of what the US is doing in Syria is not explainable. It's not justifiable. You can't put a spin on that kind of makes you go, yeah, okay, I can see where he got that. It makes no sense.
Yeah, and it's like, it doesn't matter. Like, it's never
No.
defensible to strap a bomb to your chest and blow up 8-year-old girls. Like, never. It doesn't matter what happened to you. Like, it's never defensible. And the only time that that information might be useful is in preventing the crime from happening. You know, like, this guy seems really angry about what's going on in Syria. I'm afraid he might do something. That's when it's valuable information. But after the fact, it doesn't excuse anything. It doesn't explain anything. I'm sorry, you don't just go from these, you know, happenings in the world are bothering me to let's kill people. Like, you don't, that's not a logical progression, right? And it's
especially
not,
when the thing you're angry at is children being killed.
yeah, exactly. And yeah, it bothers me. And it's just, I think they call it like the racism of lower expectations. So you expect less of other races, you know? You're like,
Okay, yeah.
you know, you expect that Middle Easterners are going to react this way when bad things happen to them. And that's a racist thing to say. And it's a racist thing to expect. And it's bigoted. And people don't see that. They accuse everybody else of being bigoted and Islamophobic when they're the ones who are basically saying that these people function at a lower level than we do.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I've never thought of it like that. Yeah, that's a good point. They're saying these people can't control themselves.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't expect them to. Well, why? Yeah. Why shouldn't we?
I know.
So
there was someone else who was talking to me in some of these conversations about Islam after the attack, who basically said, he was saying that ISIS is a perversion of Islam, and was saying stuff like, it's like saying that Iraq is water. You say that ISIS is Islamic. And I mean, I just don't know how anybody can be so blind to that. I mean, I guess maybe he hasn't read the Quran, but I mean,
yeah, maybe.
How is it a perversion of Islam to kill infidels when the Quran says clearly kill infidels wherever you find them? Like, how is that the perversion? I would say that, you know, moderates are the ones who are practicing a more watered down version of the faith, and ISIS kind of got it right. You know, like,
yes, and we've brought this up before as well, is that they get called the extremists, but I know that following instructions as they're written out is extreme. That's expected, isn't it? Like, if you get a set of instructions, whether it's, you know, how to put your table together from IKEA, or, you know, how to live your life morally, and you follow those instructions, that's not extreme.
No. And it's not a perversion.
So I think, no, and it's not. It's doing what it says. And I think that's another factor that's the problem with getting this issue sorted, is calling it extremism and radicalization is putting a Band-Aid over the problem. And they're not extreme. They're Muslims. They're following the Quran as it's written. Thankfully, you know, of the 1.6, a lot of them don't follow it to the letter. And I'm about that. It's the same with the Christians, the vast majority of them who don't follow the Bible to the letter. I mean, we're thankful for that. And I think it is a great point against religion, especially the 2 or 3 big religions, that the less you follow the religion, or the less you follow your holy book, I should say, the more likely you are to be a decent member of society.
Yeah.
The point that needs to be made, that the Muslims who cause the least problems are the Muslims who aren't following the Quran exactly as it's written.
Yeah, and
same with the Christians.
Yeah, I bring up that that passage from Exodus about never suffering a witch to live. You know, like if somebody kills a witch or someone who they perceive is a witch, and then tells everybody that they did it because God commands that, and cites that passage in the Bible, how can you then say that it has nothing to do with that faith? Like, that's exactly what people are doing with Islam. Like, they're reading, you know, you can read the Quran, you can get it anywhere, you can read everything that's in it, you can read it, and you can see that it's precisely what they're doing. And I don't understand how they can read that. They can see ISIS actually claiming themselves that they're doing it for Islam. They're doing it in the name of Allah and their prophet, and then turn around and say, no, it's got nothing to do with Islam. It definitely does. Like, that's the one thing we don't for sure.
Yeah. It's like people don't realize what the I in ISIS stands for.
I know. I don't know. I don't understand. I mean, okay, I lie. I do kind of get why people act like that. Is because they don't want to be perceived as racist or Islamophobic or bigoted. But it's like when children's lives take a back seat to how people perceive you, I can't have any respect for you. Like,
point. Yes. I'd rather, you've got to rather stand up and say, no, this is the problem, and be prepared to have people mistakenly label you phobic. You have to be prepared to do that to save a kid's life, rather than say, you know what, I'm going to pretend the problem is something else, so I'm not labeled these things. And if more kids or more people die, then that's an acceptable consequence. It's not. Absolutely not.
Yeah, it's
problems everywhere, Courtney. It's stupid.
Yes. Our chat, someone in our chat said it's cognitive dissonance and confirmation bias, and I agree. I agree with that. And it's so sad that this is the way that the world is reacting to it, because we need to put an end to these things. Like, it's just terrible what's going on, and it just keeps happening, and we just keep going through the same motions. Like you said, it's like the same recipe over and over and over again. It's becoming the status quo. Some people are becoming desensitized to it. You know, it's news that passes after a couple of days. When an 8-year-old is blown up at a pop concert, you know, on the best night of her life, like, we've got to do something different. At some point, we've got to change that recipe. We've got to change the status quo. And until we can actually look at the valid reasons they're not valid, but at the real things that cause this, and we're brave enough to admit to ourselves what those things are, nothing's going to change.
Yep, exactly. It's generational thing. Like, it has to be begun now, and it's going to take years, unfortunately, and more people will die. But if we don't do stuff, more people again will die. Like, it's to start valuing things like, you know, consultation, logic, reason, compassion, you know, discussion. We have to be able to walk away from a situation going, I disagree, but, you know, do you want me to throw a couple of steaks on the barbie? We'll crack a beer. You know, we have to get to that point where, you know, some of the things you see, like the example I brought up before, where, you know, it's rumored that someone burnt pages of a Quran and they're killed. They're dragged outside their house and they're killed for it. Or, you know, people just getting so angry that, you know, someone insulted the prophet. We really have to convince people somehow that this type of thinking is detrimental to them, let alone everyone else. You know, it's bad for them to think this. It's bad for those around them how to do it. Like, you know, education, key, empowering women, the number one thing you can do. Like, as we've discussed before, there is absolutely a correlation between lower religiosity in societies that are healthy and happy.
Mm-hmm.
Which way the cause is, like, you know, more work needs to be done. The number one way to get people out of poverty is to empower women, to get women into work, to get women into jobs, to get women into authority. That is the best thing you can do for a society. And under Islam, you know, women don't have, I mean, people will argue, they'll say, oh, no, women are so well respected. Women are this, you know, Islam was the first let women vote or something. I can't remember what it is. But, you know, Saudi Arabia, women aren't allowed to drive. They can't go out in public uncovered, and things like that. So that's the first step. And I think countries like those in Scandinavia and other European countries and Canada, Australia, that where people are happy and they are healthy, it would be great if we could show other people that this is actually a pretty good way to live, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I like being able to just walk out and go to the shops and you know, pick up a treat and walk back with a bomb dropping on me.
Yeah.
You know, that is surely better than living in fear, in rubble. You know, like, I even go back, I'm sorry, I'm waffling on a bit here, but I go back to Osama bin Laden and the stuff, obviously 9/11 and the other things he orchestrated. Like, he lived the last 20 years of his life on the run, living in squalor, you know, living in bunkers and what kind of life is that? Like, how did that make him a happier and healthier person? I don't understand.
Well,
And,
that's
you know,
the thing, though, is it doesn't make you happier and healthier in this life. It does it for you in the afterlife, right?
So we need to convince people there's no afterlife.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah,
Which
I
is
said
what we
on
do.
yeah, I said on Twitter, you know, nothing is as frightening as a human who thinks there's an afterlife.
Yeah, because you get
Scary
do-overs.
prospect. Yeah, and
You get
especially
do-overs.
when they think the people who don't agree with me, I get an even better reward. That is such dangerous thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the solution, I mean, I don't think there's ever going to be a perfect solution to terrorism, but I think that reducing terrorism is along like the same lines of the things that you said: education, empowering women. Hitch said that empowering women is the cure, you know, and but I think it's also what we do, which I guess is a form of education. But I think that, like, even if you have a believer who has a few doubts, that's not a believer that's going to strap a bomb to their chest and walk into a pop concert, right?
Yes.
If you can cause just a little bit of doubt in people, you could have potentially stopped a terrorist, right? And so I think one of the things that bothers me a lot is when people, especially other atheists, tell me, you know, why don't you shut up about this? Like, why just live and let live? That's what they like to say, or respect other people's opinions. Well, because people are dying over these opinions. People are dying over these ridiculous ideas that there's these magical beings that watch over everything that we do and don't like seeing sexual organs, and like it's ridiculous, but people are dying for it. Like, that's why we have to talk about it. If we can cause doubt in people's minds, then we can potentially stop a terrorist. And I mean, who knows? Maybe there's a terrorist out there, or a would-be terrorist out there who found out that there are holes in the story, and maybe developed a few doubts after talking to some people on the internet. Like, who knows? It could have already happened.
Yes. Yeah. You're absolutely right. It probably has. Like we're just two atheists as you do this on various online forums, and I know that we've spoken to thousands and thousands of people. So if you add all that up and all the other atheists that do this well, it's not unreasonable to think that even if it was subconscious, someone is at a point where there's a left and a right, and maybe someone that we know has helped this person go left, and right was the path. I'm not saying someone's sitting there thinking, is God real or do I blow myself up? I'm not saying it's that choice, but there's a pathway that lives can follow, and those interactions along that path can change the course. And I thought, like, no one's ever come to me and said, they were heading down that path, but I wouldn't be surprised to find that, at some point, somewhere along the way, someone was diverted from something that could have been an extreme act of violence, and now they might not even be an atheist. They might still believe, but it's a completely different thing. My household here, wedding dress shows. It's like, it's almost always on our TV. If there's a wedding dress show on, it is on the TV. It's unbelievable. And there's a show, one of them is called Say Yes to the Dress. I don't know if you know it. And maybe I don't mind watching it myself. I don't know. I don't know that I necessarily want to admit that. But there was a lady on yesterday, and she was trying on a dress, and she was very booby. My God. I said, actually, you could rest your drink on there. It's like, but she said, like, when she found her partner, that I'm sure he's the man that God sent for me. And I thought, well, if that's what it is, if that's what your belief is, then I don't have a problem with that, And if we can get everyone to think that level of belief in God, sure, go for it. I don't care. But when we're saying in Australia, the big issue is, I believe in this God, therefore you can't do X, Y, Z, That's a problem. It's not as big as that you are living wrong. I've got a promise of an afterlife. I need to take you out with me. Enjoy that, eternity of bliss. That is fatal. And it all stems back to the same thing, that belief without evidence, faith, it's, and I think we're back to where we started.
Well, you're saying they don't necessarily need to even become an atheist. It's just, and that's a good point, because all you need is just a little bit of doubt for them to not be sure, Yeah. And I think that you have to be sure when you're strapping a bomb to your chest. I think,
because you're not doing that at 98%, are you? You're not going, no. I'm 98% sure that I've got an afterlife. Give me the bomb. No one's doing that. You need to be 100% sure.
Yeah. So you just
a little bit of doubt.
Yeah. And I mean, this goes along the same lines of when we were talking about punching Nazis, and we were saying that, you can change minds, and just the fact that ex-Nazis exist proves that, and there's lots of personal testimony out there from ex-Nazis saying the reason why they changed their minds was because people talked to them and, shared stories with them and were compassionate with them and stuff like that. And they changed their minds. And so just that existence, the existence of those people is proof that minds change. And
even extreme views can change. Like Nazism is an extreme view. And like
Yeah.
you said, sorry to interrupt, but you've linked to some of those personal testimonies, and not one of them, I've read them, not one of those people said, I used to be a Nazi and now I'm not because I was interviewed on the street and someone punched me.
Yeah.
No one.
Yeah, none of them even say, you know, I'm not a Nazi anymore because I'm afraid of being a victim of violence or anything like that. None of them said that. They all just said that people were nice to them. And I mean, another example is you. You are an ex-theist. And you were pretty darn convinced of it, were you not?
I was convinced to the point that I didn't know you could be unconvinced.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was a fact. It was like you wouldn't need to convince someone who can see blue that the sky is blue, right? It's just you wake up, you need to breathe, you blink. It was that God existed. I was so sure that God existed that I didn't know you could question God existed, let alone question it and wonder. You know, it was just a fact of life. I was 100% convinced. And yeah, now don't tell anyone, but I'm 100% convinced he doesn't. But keep that to yourself, because I don't want to have to argue that.
Yeah, you totally just took on the burden of proof.
Damn it. Yeah, so absolutely minds can change. And if you want a better world, you need to be able to be prepared to change minds and maybe cop some flack on the path to doing that.
Yeah, you can't be afraid of what people say about you if what you're doing is something that we know leads to the end of horrible ideologies that people hold.
Yes. BJ Price has said in our comments that she goes, lol, we won't tell. So thank you. Don't tell anyone, because that of you. Our mate Ragin Cajun said the fear of hell kept me a Christian for a very long time. Also said, I have a serious problem with religious people threatening people with eternal torment. I've mentioned that on here before. I believed in hell longer than I believed in God. It's scary. It is a frightening thing. And, you know, it's not like you get to your 18th or 21st birthday and your parents call you aside and go, look, we're pretty sure that if you do something kind of bad, you're going to end up in hell. So probably keep it on the straight and narrow for a while. They tell you from when you can start hearing words like, you know, or you do this, you'll go to hell. What? Don't tell a kid that. Don't.
That was, I have to say, like, since being godless mom, that has been probably one of the biggest shocks. I had no idea that people were so afraid of it, like to the point that like atheists write to me now after being an atheist for years, and they'll say, I still, like, sometimes I still think about it and I get scared. Like, it was shocking to me, like how someone can say that they're an atheist and still at the same time say that they're afraid of hell still. And it's like, it makes me really mad. It really makes me mad that parents.
See, sometimes I do wonder what it's like from your perspective, having it and then being told that exactly that adults who don't believe in God still sometimes fear it. Like, it must blow your mind as to how deeply ingrained this idea gets.
Yeah, I told you that I went and I was interviewed by the CBC this week, and I was interviewed by a Muslim. He calls himself culturally Muslim man. He's a comedian, and he was really nice. And it's coming out soon, and I'll keep you guys posted on where you can hear that interview and when. But it's going to be on the Tapestry show on CBC. But anyways, he asked me, do you think that teaching young kids about religion is harmful? And I said, well, it depends on your perspective, but if you do it the way that most people do it, where you're telling your kids that if you don't follow these specific, behaviors, you're going to burn for eternity. I don't think that's right. Like, I think that that's, really wrong. I think that's abusive to drive that fear into children. And like,
Absolutely.
it's like me telling my son, if you don't put your dishes away after dinner, then someone's going to come into your room and murder you tonight. Like,
yeah,
it's terrible.
And the thing is, it's not just, they don't tell you that once, it's constant, and then if you're a regular churchgoer, it comes up there, and not something that someone mentions once, or you don't just see it in a movie. Like, you don't watch Halloween and then think Mike Myers might be hiding under your bed. It's all the time. And I think, I know we're sort of digressing a bit, but I just had an idea and I wanted to share it. I think the better thing to teach is karma. And I don't mean a Buddhist type, if you're, if you have bad things happen in this life, it's because you did bad things in a previous life and therefore you deserve it kind of karma. And I don't think it's not as spiritual as in karma. But
it's like the golden rule.
Kind of karma. Yes, exactly. And the thing, do you know the movie Pay It Forward?
Yeah.
You do a favor for someone and then they do that favor, pay that favor forward. And the thing is, like, say, using your dishes example, better to say dishes tonight, we wake up to a nice clean kitchen, and how nice is that? Or, if you help this old lady cross the road, next time you've lost your ball down the drain, she might be able to reach in and get it for you. That kind of thing.
If we help Canada. Sorry.
No, you go. That was pretty much my point.
In Canada, I don't know if this is the same in other countries, but in Canada, it usually happens at Tim Hortons, but we have like these pay it forward chains where the person in front of you pays for yours. And then you
yes, yep.
And it's like, it just goes on and on and on. Like, you never know when you're gonna get a free, double when you pull up to Tim Hortons. But I love that. I think that's a really cool thing. But yeah, that's what I teach. I teach my son that, you wouldn't want that happening to you. So don't do it to other people. It's very simple. It doesn't need to be more complicated than that. And I think that parents who need, to threaten them with hell are just, they obviously don't know how to raise children.
It's bad parenting.
It is. It's like, if that's the only way you can think of to get your kids to behave, then there's something wrong with you, Yeah.
Yes. Yep. It's bloody oath.
But yeah, anyways, that's been about an hour. So I think we should wrap this up.
Before we came on, to those watching, before we came on, I actually said to Godless Mum, can we make an hour out of this? Yeah. And she said, oh yeah, I think we can. So we, apologies if we do waffle on too much, but
yeah,
the in the chat room seem to say so.
Yeah, and it's always a different mix in there too of people.
Yes,
I love it.
Yeah, talking about why they're no longer believers. So James Harding says, being raised a Christian, I never fully believed. I just liked the stories, and science came along. BJ Price says, understanding why there are still apes did it for me. Raging Cajun says, I suffer from religious trauma syndrome because of my upbringing. Yeah, so yeah, there are very many reasons. My dad actually, he it doesn't seem to happen as much anymore, but there was we used to get all these books. I know he did a computer book and like a space astronomy book, and you'd buy one a week, and then over a series of weeks you'd have the full collection kind of thing, and you get them from like the Newsagent, I think. And one set he bought, the astronomy books, I started reading them, and it explained how solar systems and stars and planets were formed. And those books were a big part of why I stopped believing. I mean, I stopped believing years later, but understanding that it wasn't a case of no Earth, no Earth, no Earth, no Earth, Earth, understanding that that didn't happen made me think, well, probably God isn't responsible. And those little thoughts and that investigation that I did obviously led me down the path to being on this very podcast right now, talking to you and our fine listeners.
Yeah. So it's not difficult to create that doubt in people and to raise questions that will linger in their heads and stop them from hurting other people in the name of their faith, because now they have a doubt. Just one doubt will do it.
Yep. One doubt is enough.
Yeah. But I just, my heart goes out to all of the people who are affected by this.
Yep.
And I don't ever want to see stuff like this happen again, but I know sadly that it will. Yep. And I know that it's not going to be far.
Mm-hmm. And one of the victims, this guy's sister who quoted from, she's a victim of this now too. Like, she's lost her brother.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what her beliefs are, but there's no way that she can be happy that he's done this.
No.
So she's lost a family member and 22 other victims.
Well, I read
Ariana,
that.
Yeah, I was going to say Ariana Grande is. Sorry, you go.
I read that some of the other family members of the bomber, there's evidence that they've been radicalized too. So a couple of them have been
brothers.
Yeah, they've been arrested too.
But yeah, Ariana Grande, I have heard that she's going to go back and do a benefit concert in Manchester. Mm-hmm. And if so, all kudos, all my applause to her, because that would be tough.
Yeah.
Like, in that city again. I mean, anywhere, let alone that city, would be a huge effort. So if she actually ends up doing that, I'd be very, very impressed. That is
it has happened before with the Eagles of Death Metal. When they they were in the attack at the Bataclan in I don't know if I'm saying that right. Probably sounds a lot more French than that, but they went back. They went back pretty quick. There's actually a documentary I've written about it on my blog called.
Yes, you have.
Nosani. I can't speak French. I'm sorry.
You live in a French language country.
I can understand it. I cannot pull it out of my mouth. Like, it's just so. But anyways, yeah, that documentary is really good, and it's kind of about the same scenario. So, yeah, I hope that everybody who has survived this attack recovers, but I don't know how you do. I don't know how you recover from witnessing something like that, or like even Ariana Grande. Like, I don't know how you get past that.
It's going to be hard for her to have a career in music from this point on. But I mean, I don't listen to her. I couldn't pick her out of a lineup. I've heard her name and that's about it. But, she's 23 herself. Like, she's barely, stopped being a child herself. And to have this happen, like, through no fault of her own, she has done nothing wrong. I hope she gets, any help psychologically. And, I do honestly. To pay for the people who were killed, which is a grand gesture as well. I don't think she needs to, but it's lovely of her to make that offer. So many victims, and for nothing.
Yep.
There was no gain out of this. No one gained anything.
But yeah, I think we should probably wrap this up because I have to get back to crazy world.
All right. Thank you for your time. Thanks
Thank you.
everyone for watching.
Yeah, and if you want to support us, go to patreon.com/commonheathens and or share our stuff on social media and stuff like that. And thanks for joining us on your weekend.
Yes. Yeah, very different. So it's Sunday morning for me here.
Yeah. Saturday afternoon here.
You can email us, info@commonheathens.com, if you've got anything you'd like to tell us or like to ask us. Mr. Oz Atheist on Twitter, godless_mom on Twitter. We also have Twitter. We also have @commonheathens on Twitter, which honestly I don't check often enough, so I need to pull my finger out and do that more often.
Yeah.
And my apologies.
And also next episode will most likely be, providing nothing big happens between now and then, will most likely be about alternative medicine and all that funny woo-woo that we
chemtrails and all those fun
conspiracy
stuff.
theories.
Excellent. Looking forward to it.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.